As we come to the end of 21 days of prayer and fasting, how are we doing? Awesome. A couple people laughing. I don't know, again, your journey. I know for me, there's been ups and downs. There's been some days that I've been getting after it and actually disciplined. Other days where I'm like, I gotta eat. I gotta have something. But as we come to the end of our 21 days of prayer and fasting, I want to name something before we go to the text. Often at the end of seasons like this, we can expect clarity. We can expect direction. We can expect answers. I know that's where I'm at. If you call South Lake home, you're very familiar with our journey of relocation, and I know that's exactly where I'm at, looking for clarity, expecting direction. But very often, what surfaces through a season like this, when you're waiting on the Lord, when you're contending for the Lord, when you're expecting something, when you're expecting answers or clarity, what often can rise to the surface is fatigue. Questions that haven't gone away. Especially when you're doing it for a time period, like 21 days. You're like, okay, I'm expecting God to have answers for me. But what ends up happening is you end up exhausted, realizing that the strength that it took you to get this far didn't end in the result that you wanted it to. And actually doesn't even have to be limited to 21 days of prayer and fasting. That could be any season that you're in when you're contending before the Lord, waiting on the Lord for something. It could be that you're praying for direction in your life, waiting for direction in your life, waiting for healing, physical, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, waiting for God to move in someone else's life. Maybe you're contending for a child to return to the faith, a grandchild to return to the faith, a spouse to return to that first love that you two once shared, a loved one to choose health and wholeness from their addiction. Have you been in that place where you're waiting on the Lord and you're exhausted, you're weary? And that's the exact moment that the text meets us in. We're going to be in Isaiah chapter 40, verses 27 through 31, together as we close 21 days of prayer and fasting. The book of Isaiah, Isaiah 40, is a major turning point in the book because all of the chapters preceding it, chapters 1 through 39, are heavy. They're on judgment. They're on confrontation. They're on, this is what they're warning. Here's what's going to happen if you don't walk with the Lord. But then in verse 40, there's a tone shift. There's a complete departure from this tone of judgment and heaviness to something very different. Isaiah 40 verse 1 opens and says, comfort my people. Isaiah 40 is not spoken to people who are about to suffer. That's Isaiah 1 through 39. But Isaiah 40 is spoken to people who are in suffering, who are in waiting, who are contending before the Lord, who are struggling in their walk. There's a shift there. He's no longer warning people before judgment. He's speaking comfort to people living inside it. What's happened is that Jerusalem has fallen. The temple is gone. They've been displaced for decades at this point. They're weary, they're scattered, and the question they're asking themselves is this: have you forgotten me, God? Where are you, God? Do you see me, God? Do you see what I'm going through? Where are you? Have you forgotten me? Have you been there in your own walk with God, where the faith that you once leaned on feels more distant? Not because you walked away or anything like that, but because circumstances of your life, they haven't changed. Where what used to anchor you, your spiritual disciplines maybe, worshiping the Lord, reading scripture, community, it isn't 21 days of prayer and fasting. It isn't resulting in what you were hoping for. And now all you're left with is waiting. You're still praying. You're still showing up. You're still believing. You're still maybe still doing 21 days of prayer and fasting. But underneath it all, there's a question brewing in your soul. God, do you remember me? God, have you forgotten me? I'm weak. I'm weary. I'm exhausted. And I'm waiting for you. That's where Isaiah 40 meets us, is in that moment right there. We're going to read the entire text together up front, and then we're going to go through it in some segments together. Isaiah writes this: "Why do you complain, Jacob? Why do you say, Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord? My cause is disregarded by my God. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary. Even young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Notice something. This isn't a one-time concern for them. Why do you complain? Why do you say? This is a narrative that's been forming over the decades. And I don't want to cast blame here. I don't want to think of them as less than how dare you question the Lord, because that's where I'm at times. That's where we are at times. Isaiah is writing to people who have been in exile for decades, but this is what's starting to take root in their hearts. In their waiting, they've been believing, but now they're tired. And in their weariness, in their exhaustion, in their tired faith, they say two things. My way is hidden from you, Lord. Do you see me? My cause is disregarded by you, God. Have you forgotten me? Do you remember me? Where are you? My life feels invisible to you, God. Life has pushed me into the shadows. Do you see me? Do you remember me? God, I know you see everything, so why aren't you acting here? And I think most of us recognize this feeling. I would actually submit, all of us have been there, and I'd say some of us might be there right now. There are seasons when prayer quietly shifts from this excitement of, God, what do you have for me? I'm excited for you, but your prayer shifts to, God, do you see this at all? Do you see the turmoil my life is in? Do you see how I've been praying, how I've been showing up, how I've been contending for my relationship with my spouse, with my kids, my job? What's going on? Do you see me? What's beautiful here is Isaiah doesn't rebuke their pain. He doesn't tell them you're wrong for feeling this way, but he doesn't allow their conclusion to stand. Because the danger isn't asking that question, of course. The danger is allowing your exhaustion to reshape your faith. And Isaiah responds immediately. He doesn't let verse 27, hang in the air. He says this in verse 28. He says, "Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom." Isaiah is saying, You already know this, Israel, but weariness has just made you forget. Let me remind you, O Israel. Let me remind you, O Jacob, in your striving, in your struggle. Let me recenter who God is for you. The Lord is everlasting. He is not seasonal. He doesn't lose interest halfway in your story. He doesn't burn hot and then just disappear. He didn't start something in your life just to abandon you there. He didn't make a promise and just to walk away from it. He is the God who outlasts your waiting. Before your problem existed, he was God. And hear this, after your season is over, he will still be God. He spoke it before, he can speak it again. He was faithful before, he will be faithful now. The Lord, he's reminding us, he's reminding them, the Lord is everlasting. He is the creator of the ends of the earth. God isn't confined to one place or one season or one moment in history. He is above their exile. He is above our feelings of abandonment. He's above what we're going through. If God created it, it doesn't control him. If God formed it, it doesn't intimidate him. If God spoke it, he can speak it again. What feels big to us, it's in the palm of his hands. What feels impossible to us, it's held by him. Because God is the creator of the ends of the earth. He goes on, he reminds Israel, in our weariness, he reminds us, God does not grow faint or weary. He doesn't need a break. He doesn't need to regroup. He doesn't need to recharge. You may be exhausted right now. We might be exhausted right now. He is not. And what's interesting about this, he's also not tired of you. He doesn't grow weary of your contending. He doesn't go weary of your prayers. He doesn't grow weary of your wants and needs. He's not worn out by your waiting. God is not overwhelmed by your needs. The strength you feel like you're losing today, he never lost that. He does not grow faint or weary. And then lastly, Isaiah closes this very encouraging correction with this: his understanding no one can fathom. Just because his ways feel hidden doesn't mean God lost control. Just because we don't understand it, it doesn't mean he doesn't. God is not confused by your situation. God is not guessing about your future. God's not surprised by the delay that's going on. You are held, you are known, you are being led, even when the path feels unseen. His understanding, no one can fathom. Isaiah, to the weary, to the exhausted, to the discouraged people, he reminds them that our God is everlasting. Our God is sovereign. Our God is tireless. Our God is wise beyond our understanding. And that's where the story of the Israelites begins to shift and begins to turn. And so as we worship together, what I want you to be doing is what are you waiting on the Lord for? What are you contending for? Are you in a place where you are weary and exhausted and drained because of your waiting? As we worship and continue to study Isaiah together, I want you to allow his presence just to encourage you. Allow his presence to meet you exactly where you are. Let's continue to worship together. So we've established that Isaiah 40, of course, is written to an exhausted people who feel forgotten, people who feel unseen, people who don't know how God is going to show up, when he's going to show up. They've been in exile for decades at this point, what Isaiah is prophesying into. And Isaiah has reminded a weary people of who God is. God is everlasting. He doesn't grow weary, that his understanding is beyond our ability. And now Isaiah turns a corner. Because once you recenter God in your life, what do you do when that question still remains? You know, if God doesn't grow weary, why am I? And Isaiah answers that question directly. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29 and 30, he writes this. He says, God, he gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. He gives strength to the weary. If you're here today and you are weary, God gives you strength. He increases the power of the weak. Who does Isaiah say God gives strength to? Not the disciplined, not the perfect, not the impressive, not those who held on the longest, to the weary, to the weak, to the worn down, to the exhausted, to the ones that are at their end. And in other words, this should be good news to some of us here today. That God does not wait for you to recover your strength and perform and get right before he meets you where you are. He meets you at the end of your rope. And Isaiah actually goes on to name some of the strongest people in their society: the young, the capable, the ones with stamina, the ones that you'd expect to hold up. And he says even they collapse. Why? Because exhaustion in your waiting isn't a failure. It's a human reality. It's what we all go through. Waiting on God, waiting on the Lord. It wears on everyone. Faithfulness over time, it costs us something. Obedience without a resolution, it drains you. And Isaiah wants you to know what you're feeling doesn't mean something is wrong with you. If you're here today feeling drained and weary and exhausted, unsure of what's going to happen, unsure of the direction God is taking you, what you're feeling does not mean something is wrong with you. It means you're human. And if you're here today and you're waiting on the Lord for something, again, maybe it's a physical healing that hasn't come. Maybe it's a direction that still feels unclear. It's a door that keeps staying closed, a relationship, a calling, a prayer. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's something you've been waiting on your entire life, and you're tired, and you're exhausted, and you're weary, and early on, I don't know if you're like me, but early on, like for me, I can feel, I can strategize, I can try to persevere and get through it. I can maybe figure it out on my own. But when you're waiting long enough, you quickly realize you're at the end. You can't do it. And so if you're feeling tired right now in your faith, if you're feeling worn down, if you've been praying and fasting these 21 days and you feel like you've been doing your best, but God just feels absent and feels distant, Isaiah says that you are in a good place. You are not unseen. You're not forgotten. You're not abandoned. God hasn't forgotten you. He gives strength to the weary. He increases the power of the weak, which means this waiting, it didn't break you. This waiting brought you to the place where God does his deepest work. And once Isaiah establishes that, once he explains why we're exhausted and where God meets us, he's ready to make a promise. He's ready to make a promise to you here today, because the people who wait on the Lord, the people who stay bound up in him, even when your strength runs out, those people will not collapse. He says later on that they will be renewed. And that's where Isaiah takes us next. But before we go there, I want us to continue to worship together. So we've established that Isaiah 40 is written to an exhausted and weary people. Isaiah opens by establishing who God is. And then he continues by reminding us what God gives, strength to the weary. And in the final verse, in verse 40, and where we'll conclude, Isaiah says this: "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." This is a familiar verse. It's all over Hobby Lobby. It's in our houses. Live, laugh, love. People get it tattooed. But this is not It's not hype. This is not fanfare. This is a promise. A promise spoken to a people who have already been waiting a long time. It's a promise written to people in exile. It's a promise written to people that are displaced, people who have been faithful and are tired. But those who hope in the Lord. A reminder from 2 weeks ago. It's the same Hebrew word here. Hope or wait here. It's that Hebrew word kavah. If you were here 2 weeks ago, you remember us teaching through that. A quick reminder. It's not a passive waiting. It's not I'm gonna resign myself, step back, and God, you're gonna do your thing. I'm just gonna sit here. It means a gathering together. The Lord gathering together to be bound up in God, to stay attached to him, to abide in him, to borrow language from the New Testament. If you remember, actually now back to the Old Testament, the Genesis language I talked about 2 weeks ago, that feeling like life is in chaos, to God gathering it together, or kavah, gathering it together to create life. It's that staying attached. It's connected to God when answers seem slow. It's staying faithful when outcomes aren't clear. It's trust under tension. And Isaiah then says, those who do that, who wait, who hope, like that, bound up in God, shall renew their strength. There's an exchange happening here. You can sense it, you can see it. That as we wait on the Lord like that, for the Israelites and for us today, we can grow weary. But as we wait on the Lord like that, as we don't take things into our own hands, as we don't try to force it, as we realize that God gives it freely, when we try to force it, when we try to do it ourselves, that's what leads us into exhaustion. That's what leads us into despair. But waiting on the Lord in that way, being bound up by Him, that leads to a renewed strength. And then Isaiah gives us 3 images of what this renewed strength looks like. Again, he began with that feeling of weariness and being forgotten, who God is, what God gives, strength. And now what does this look like practically in our lives? What does God's strength actually look like when we're waiting on the Lord? What does that practically look like for us? 3 images that Isaiah gives us. Because waiting on the Lord doesn't produce these spectacular, awesome, strong Christians. What waiting on the Lord really produces are sustained ones. And we'll see that in these 3 images. The first image, they will soar on wings like eagles. For every Israelite in exile, this phrase would immediately trigger a memory. It's not just metaphor. Yes, it sounds cool. Yes, it makes for great, again, signs in our houses and on the wall. Yeah, it sounds good. But this isn't merely metaphor here. What Isaiah is doing is he's triggering a memory, a callback to Exodus chapter 19. When God said, I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Again, it's not just a fun metaphor here. Isaiah's not just being poetic for poetry's sake. He's calling back a memory. The Israelites did not lift themselves out of Egypt. God did. The Israelites, they didn't rescue themselves from slavery. God did. They did not carry themselves to freedom. God did. What Isaiah is doing is he's reminding them that the same God who carried you is the same God who will lift you now. The same God who did it before will do it again, soaring in this case, soaring on wings, on eagle's wings. It's not an escape from their circumstances. It's not God just delivering them. It's perspective on their circumstances. It's clarity. It's that remembering of, oh man, if God did it then, He can do it now. It's moments when God lifts you above the weight of what you're going through, above what you're waiting on. Not because your circumstances might have changed, but because He is faithful. And so what does this look like practically? When you've waited long enough, you can start to lose that perspective. When you've been faithful and you're exhausted and you're just trying to breathe again, God's strength looks like being carried. And I wonder if you've felt that before. I wonder if you've sensed that supernatural carrying in your life, that perspective shift, that again, maybe the circumstances haven't changed. Maybe you're still waiting on the Lord. Maybe you're still contending before the Lord. But all of a sudden, God's perspective starts to enter into your heart and start to enter into your soul, and realizing that God can do this, that God is carrying you. I was meeting with a volunteer in the high school ministry, and they were talking about their fast a little bit. And they were saying how they had this moment where they broke their fast, and they were just downcast and disappointed in themselves that they just kind of succumbed to the hunger, and they ate. And the next day, they got back on it. And that next morning, as they recommitted themselves, they realized they had this moment where the perspective shift away from this shame and guilt to realizing that God's power is greater than the fast. That was the word that they received in that morning. And that's an example of that perspective shift for them. That's an example of being carried through this. Not in their shame and guilt, but that God is greater than the fast that they're going through right now. And I don't know what that is for you. I bet we have stories of moments where God has provided vision for you, clarity for you, perspective for you. That's what God's strength looks like. That's the first image Isaiah gives us, soaring on wings like eagles, a reminder that God carries you. The second image that Isaiah gives us is they will run and not grow weary. Notice something also as we go through this. Soaring, running, walking. There's a trajectory of this. The Hebrew word for run here, it means to press forward. It means to move with purpose. It's not like a sprint where you're running with adrenaline or running in fear, which could be the case. That's not what Isaiah is trying to communicate here. He's communicating a running to move with purpose. And receiving the Lord's strength that God gives is those running seasons. It's when responsibility is increasing. Obedience is a sacrifice. You're in a season where life just requires sustained effort. And Isaiah doesn't say you won't get tired. What he says is you won't collapse. God's strength means you won't collapse under the weight. Because as you're waiting on the Lord, when you're hoping in the Lord, God can give you strength for these seasons when you still have to show up. You still have to lead. You want to just crawl in bed and get into the fetal position and just go under the blankets and just hope God takes care of it. But you still got to get up. You still got to lead. You still got things to do. You're on the edge of collapse, but you can't collapse. God gives you strength for those seasons. Every single parent in the room knows exactly what I'm talking about. When life is just crashing down on you, but you got to wake up still at 6 a.m. because those kids need breakfast. Your kids need to get to school, and you want nothing to do with it, but God gives you the strength to press through. Waiting doesn't always mean life slows down for you. Sometimes it means God gives you strength to keep moving without collapsing. That's what receiving God's strength looks like. That's what God can give you in these seasons where you need to run and keep running and keep going and not grow weary. It's strength that is anchored in the hope of God. The third image that Isaiah gives us is they will walk and not be faint. And I love this because this is the most ordinary verse in the passage. It's the most ordinary verse in this section. And I think Isaiah puts it last on purpose because walking is daily obedience, isn't it? It's ordinary faithfulness. It's long obedience in the same direction. Most of life is not soaring. Most of life is not running. Most of life is walking. Showing up, staying faithful, trusting God quietly. And Isaiah says God gives you strength for that. Not just the moments that feel spiritual and powerful and moving, but for the days when all you can do is put one foot in front of the other and keep going. And this is what God's strength looks like when waiting becomes long obedience. When there's no dramatic lift, there's no burst of energy, there's no revelation, there's no visible progress, waiting strength looks like not fainting. It looks like still walking, putting one step in front of the other, trusting the Lord to deliver, trusting the Lord that He has a plan, trusting the Lord of what He said He did, He will do in your life. And this may be the greatest evidence for you today that God has been sustaining you all along, because waiting didn't stop you, it kept you. Walking is that long obedience in faith. So as we conclude 21 days of prayer and fasting today, the win is not always answers or clarity or even changed circumstances, but renewed strength within them. And I know that's what I've received in this season. That waiting on the Lord did not waste you. It didn't mean God was absent. Waiting was the place where God was carrying you, gathering you, and putting you back together just as He always has. And so today, whether you feel in your faith like you're soaring and you're receiving vision and clarity, or you have perspective, or you feel like you're running with the weight of the world on your back, just trying not to collapse, or you feel like you're just one foot in front of the other, day by day, step by step, moment by moment, the promise still stands that the same God who carried Israel out of Egypt is carrying you today. And Isaiah tells us who God is, what he gives us, and how God gives strength to his people who wait on him, who have that kavah waiting, that bound up in him. And what's beautiful is that in the New Testament, Jesus echoes this thought. God does something even more personal for his people who are weary, who are burdened, who are exhausted in the waiting for a Messiah. He doesn't just explain strength. Jesus invites them and us today into the strength. He invites a tired people into a way of life where strength becomes walking with him, where obedience doesn't crush them and us today, where waiting no longer exhausts us, but because we're no longer carrying the burden alone. And so as we conclude, what I want you to do is I want you to allow the words of Jesus to speak over you. Not as instruction, not as like, here we go, let's try harder and get better, but as an invitation, as a blessing, if you will. And if you're tired and if you've been waiting, this is Jesus' invitation to you. Matthew 11, 28 through 30. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me. Keep company with me. Kavah, be bound up in me. Abide in me. Keep company with me. And you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Before we take communion together, let's continue to worship.